Well, it's the 1st of July, 2024. I read this little story. I'll pass it on to you. It's kind of enlightening. But it's funny how you can win Nobel Peace Prize. The whole thing is Nobel Peace Prize, kind of ironic. It's kind of a gift of, yeah, that's the way it's viewed. First, a little background on the subject. In 1888, in France, a fellow by the name of Ludwig passed away suddenly from a heart attack. In a rush, a French newspaper thought they had a story on a famous individual. They did, sort of. He was related to one. And they quickly wrote obituary in error. They used the name of Ludwig's brother. It was very harsh and severe. They called the man a merchant of death, and he had grown rich in ways of horror, blood, and war. Basically, he had discovered ways to kill and blow up people. His notions and creations made it new ways for man to kill and maim each other, mutilate and kill. The French periodical was later informed that they had made an error in their reporting. However, the correction wasn't made until after the fact that Albert Nobel read his own obituary instead of his brother's. To some, this is kind of the enlightening moment that made him determine that he was going to leave his fortune to philanthropy, the Nobel Prizes. However, so far, no one's ever found a copy of this original obituary. So that notion might just be a myth. Might. We don't know. We just can't find the original. There are other reasonings behind this. That inside he was perhaps a pacifist. He certainly was a bachelor. I don't think it has anything to do with it, but one of his contacts that he had was a close friend, Bertha von Stuttner, and she was a peace activist at her time in the 19th century. She had written down an anti-war novel, Lay Down Your Arms. She was from Austria. She came in, she was his secretary for a little while, ran his household, and then she fell in love with another man and got married. But they still conversed over the years by correspondence and letters and such. Every now and then she would come back and see him and talk to him and probably ask for gifts as far as money goes for her activity and for peace movements and congresses. But as I said, Nobel was a pacifist and he considered war a great crime. It's kind of ironic that he made his fortune from munitions. He was an industrialist. He had over 100 factories that did nothing but make explosives and weapons. He thought that maybe I can make a weapon powerful enough that will persuade people to do away with war. Maybe that's what he says. That's what his biographer says. But that's questionable. So he came up with this idea for his prizes. But he didn't tell anybody about it, or very few people about it. When he died, December 10th, 1896, his family came to realize that Uncle Albert or Uncle Alfred has left us out of the bag. We're basically getting nothing. All this is going to go to his foundation to be distributed in prizes on a yearly basis. So they tied up the courts for a little while, and it took about 5 years, and they figured it out, and the prizes were to go on. The selected Swedish and Norwegian institutions were given the go-ahead to go ahead and elect and cast the prizes. So the first prize was in 1901 on December 10th, the anniversary of his death. And the first Peace Prize was split between two. Both brilliant accomplishments for both men. The first was Friedrich Passy. He was a lawyer from Paris. On the side, he studied economics. He was an advocate of free trade. He thought that as long as we kept trade open between countries, countries would continue to work towards peace and not so much conflict. It's a nice thought. Suddenly there was a conflict in the 1860s involving Luxembourg and France and Prussia. And he created the Independent and Permanent League of Peace, hoping to avoid any military conflict. However, the French went to war with the Prussians, and then he developed the French Society of Friends for Peace. This later became the French Society of Arbitration Between Nations. In the 1880s, Passy was part of the French Chamber of Deputies, which spent most of their time promoting international peace. In 1889, he became one of the three presidents of the Interparliamentary Union, a group that continued to pursue peace even when all diplomatic reasonings have failed. The group is still around. The second half of the prize went to Henry Dunant. He was born in Switzerland. He grew up as a businessman of commerce, and he traveled a great deal. In 1861, he was trying to start a business venture in Algeria, and he discovered that he had to gain the water rights in this area. However, the only person to convince was Napoleon III, the emperor. So he had to catch up with him, found him in Italy in the middle of the Battle of Solferino. Dunant was caught up with the fierceness of the bloodshed and the need of the wounded and the dying on the battlefield. He got involved with this so much he saw a vision of an international body whose members could act without fear of being injured themselves while aiding the wounded. His work led to the signing of the Geneva Convention in 1864 and the start of the Red Cross. His business ventures and his partners all became bankrupt because of his involvement with his new work. He later retired to a hospice and was basically unknown until this time later. Both these men were awarded the honor by their life's works. They were good common men. And sometimes presidents win the Peace Prize. So in 1905, Theodore Roosevelt negotiated the end of the Russo-Japanese War in New Hampshire, the Treaty of Portsmouth. He was given the prize in 1906. Woodrow Wilson from New Jersey arranged the League of Nations, as you know, at the end of the Great War. In a hope to stop all future wars. It was the forerunner of the United Nations. The only issue was the United States didn't want to join, or maybe there was a conflict with Woodrow Wilson, as he would not take any compromise to it. He too was awarded a prize after the League was formed, 1 year later. Jimmy Carter negotiated a peace at Camp David called the Camp David Accords between Egypt and Israel in 1978. Now, he was not awarded the Peace Prize till 2002. All these presidents, their work stopped warfare and further bloodshed, and did give peace in those areas. The fourth president to be awarded the Nobel Peace Prize was Barack Obama in 2009. He was given the prize after only being president for 8 months. The Nobel Peace Prize Committee cited that he was awarded this honor because of his extraordinary efforts to strengthen international diplomacy and cooperation between peoples. He did no negotiations, he ended no conflict, he stopped no bloodshed. The committee also mentioned his peaceful withdrawal of U.S. forces from Iraq. That's really weird because in February 2009, same year, President Obama increased the military deployment to 68,000 troops in Afghanistan. Then again, after 3 more months, the president added another 30,000 troops. This actually even drew critics from his own party. As of 2010 June, the Afghan war was being compared to the Vietnam War in length. In August, in Iraq, the U.S. combat mission came to a close. But at the same time, 50,000 U.S. troops remain on Iraqi soil. So there you go. Life doesn't always seem like it should be. Peanuts can be used to make an explosive like dynamite. An explosive designer and manufacturer can give away millions of dollars or kroners for those that can find a way to peace, or to those that make really good speeches about it and negotiate nothing. History is funny, though sometimes it shouldn't be. But that's history. It's all in the past. Thanks for watching. Remember to like, click, and subscribe. See you tomorrow when we talk about today.